Hello, everybody. I am doing a redo of the live stream because of some repairs that caused disruption in my home studio, which are still ongoing, which is why I'm someplace else recording this. And like the previous one, it's really going to just be a Q&A where I answer your questions about whatever you want me to basically answer your questions about, outside of a few certain things that I don't talk about, such as specific investment advice. And as my disclaimer, nothing on this channel is investment advice. Please do your own research and due diligence, or work with an advisor, because I run my own wealth management firm, and for compliance reasons, I don't talk about specific trades. Uh, and yeah, I've had a very good 4th of July. I hope you guys all had one too. And yeah, let's get started with some of the questions. Thoughts on Austrian economics and Thomas Sowell. I think Thomas Sowell is really interesting. He's really good at explaining like counterintuitive reasons on why certain things play out the way they do. I agree with most of a lot of his ideas. Some I don't. Like I feel like his thesis about how only children tend to outperform and be more successful than those younger children in larger families. I don't think that's unilaterally true, and but for the most part, I think a lot of his stuff is very good. And Austrian economics, I did a video about Austrian economics in the iceberg of economics. That's part 4 where I cover it. And my view is I'm sympathetic to Austrian economics in a lot of ways, particularly a lot of its policy solutions. And I think the Austrian business cycle is the best way of explaining the business cycle. But I think the problem with Austrian economics is praxeology, which I just did a YouTube short recently about praxeology. But it's, there you aren't familiar, it's the idea that you can just deduct logic to get answers to things, and you don't have to prove things statistically or quantitatively, which is my main critique of Austrians, is that they never want to prove anything quantitatively, and they just want to do everything by a priori reason, which, I mean, that's fine for rhetoric, but I generally like to have some sort of like mathematical evidence for your claims, or any sort of evidence for your claims. And so that's why I saw myself like a Swiss economist, because I am mostly in sympathetic with Austrian economics, but I do have a little bit of the Chicago school in me in terms of like wanting to actually quantify stuff. Next question. Romania adopting the euro would be a good move. It depends on whether the Romania relies on devaluing its currency relative to the euro to stay competitive and balance its public finances or not. I don't know enough about Romania's public finances to really have a strong opinion about that. There's a lot of benefits to the euro. It probably will increase tourism. It will make international trade and business easier. And it'll probably a harder currency, which is probably good for savers who live in Romania. But if your country's fiscal structure is not amenable to the discipline that the euro may require, it could cause problems like it did for, say, Greece and Italy. Let's see. In terms of specific career advice, Pavel, I recommend just reaching out to me directly for that. But like, if your strongest suit is interpersonal skills, you should be in some sort of business development type role. And yeah, if you do want to contact me, I'll send a link to my general consultation forms for like whether it's for investments or anything else. And also, if you want access to my videos early, or special members only videos, which I release a couple a month on average, consider becoming a member to the channel. And I'm also going to attach a link to my Calendly for those who want to directly contact me, and also my general consultation form for wealth management and investment related questions. which I'm going to share with you guys right now before getting back to the questions. So just give me a second. And now let's get back to the questions. Okay, so how did you get interested in reading about finance? Well, I got interested in reading about finance because I got interested in finance in general because my grandparents gave me shares of stock instead of the equivalent cash value that they usually gave me for my birthday, and just wanting to learn what this thing was and why it's more valuable than just having cash kind of dig me into the rabbit hole of finance. I also like learning why things the way they work, and money flows in finance often are the explanation on why things happen the way they do in the world. And it's also why I'm interested in history, because history is the story essentially of why things are the way they are, whether it's politics, economics, culture, social structures, etc. There's a history behind everything. History is not just a few battles and names and dates that you learn in a high school class. It's basically the path that everything that exists, how it came along. You give the history of a person's life. That's usually a biography. You could have history of social movements, history of cultural things, history of or how a certain product was made or how a certain business emerged. So, yeah, that is kind of my take on it. And so that's how I got interested in finance. Let's see. I don't have a Bitcoin price target for the end of 2025. So that's the answer to your question. I'm not going to avoid it because I don't have really a good answer because I don't follow crypto that closely. I know what's going on generally, but I don't really invest or trade in it. So it's not really an avoidance thing. It's just not a priority. Yeah. The other question I have for you guys before I get back to the questions is, do you think that I should do a video about the passage of the big, beautiful bill and the implications of that? If the answer is yes, then let me know, because I think that there's a lot of interesting counterintuitive winners and losers. I've skimmed over the details, but I will do much deeper dive research on it should I feel like the audience would want to see it. And I'll have to do it anyway for my own primary professional reasons because it affects a lot of stuff that my clients are concerned about. But yeah, let's see. I am going to, while I wait for questions, I'm going to probably bring down the curtains because I could see the light behind me kind of shining and creating a weird lighting in the back. So I will be right back. Yeah, that's a lot better. So I figured I would fix that. But yeah, let me see. Let's just see if I switch to the whole total live chat. If there's any. Any new questions? Seems like a lot of people are just out and about doing stuff. The reason why I'm releasing the video now is because the live stream now, because I'm going to be pretty busy between now and the travel one I'm doing in a couple weeks, just with stuff of my own business and my upcoming meetups. I'm going to be having a meetup this Friday in Los Angeles, which in Beverly Hills particularly. So if you are in the LA area and want to see me, that's the best way to do it. Oh, guys, I got two questions now. Do you think Tocqueville is right about America eventually turning into Catholicism? I never knew that Tocqueville had a theory of America turning Catholic. If you could provide some details or a source on that, I'd like to read more about it. That seems pretty interesting. I think America is eventually going to turn to Catholicism because of demographics, particularly. You have like the surge of like Hispanic immigration has changed the balance from Catholicism to Protestantism. America used to be a lot more of a Protestant country in the 1880s than it is today. I think secularism is kind of going to become like a Gen X and millennial thing to a certain degree. And I think future generations are going to be more religious for two main reasons. One is because of the lack of like existential meaning from a nihilist secular worldview. And you've already started to see if a lot of Gen Zs who didn't grow up in a church tradition are coming back. And they're particularly coming back to Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. And the second reason is simply just the birth rate spread between religious people and those who are not religious. And so as a result, I think America will become a more Christian country. And I think that the intellectual depth that the Catholic Church has compared to some of these more recent evangelical forms of Protestantism, I think is an appealing strength to Catholicism. And I think J.D. Vance's conversion is kind of like a beginning sign of the political winds changing and the cultural winds changing about Catholicism. But yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I'm a Catholic, though, like, take what I say with a heavy, heavy grain of salt. But yeah, I think that there are reasons why I think America could shift to becoming a more Catholic country. Or if it does, instead of the Catholic Protestant split, we're going to have the Catholic secular split as kind of the new fault line in politics. Or the Protestants are going to move, I think, trend more to the left over the particularly evangelicals over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's a longer video for the theory on why I think that's going to be the case. But I think that's a potential there. And if America became a more Catholic society, there are a few socioeconomic implications to that. One, I think you'd have stricter abortion laws. I think you would have it would become a social status symbol to have large families versus kind of people looking at it as a negative. It'll be kind of a way that wealthy people kind of do to show off. And it's already that way in trad cath circles, but I could see that expanding more to the general population, like large families as like a trophy or a status symbol instead of like a luxury car or a big house. I think that other implications of that is that I think it would be a less racial polarization because the Catholic Church by far is the least racially polarized religion there is. There's saints from basically every national and ethnic background. And it's very good at integrating different cultures and ethnicities compared to other religions. And the Catholic Church, I think, is a great example of how diversity really can work because you have, again, variance among different communities of the way people practice Catholicism, but they all kind of agree to a shared mission. And so that's why it works. And so, yeah, that's kind of some of my takes on it. And then the other thing is that you might have a little bit more, the downside is you might have more nepotism that like Catholic countries tend to have that issue for various reasons. But yeah, that's in terms of, I think but I generally think, and then that America becoming a more Catholic country would be a net positive thing. But again, I'm heavily biased saying that. Let's see. Next question. What are your thoughts on the Big Beautiful Bill? I think I'm going to make a separate video about the Big Beautiful Bill. So I'm not going to get into it too much. I think that on the net, I don't like the idea of the government expanding deficits when we have a major fiscal crisis that's potentially coming because of very abnormally high deficits relative to GDP, especially in peacetime. So that's not good. However, like if you look at the individual line items of what they're spending it on and where they are doing cuts, there are some interesting ideas there. I'll get more into it. Next question. Are you actively practicing Catholic? Yeah, I'm not perfect, but I do aim to go to Mass every Sunday. I'm involved in my local Catholic community in a variety of ways. I do intend on raising my own future family to be Catholic. Most of my family, especially on my father's side, is still practicing Catholics. So, yeah, um, the answer is yes to your question. Let's see. Thoughts on Elon Musk's new political party? Um, I mean, it's too early to say. I mean, third parties really usually don't work just because of the way we have a pass the post system. So basically, it's a plurality victory. So usually, if you have a party, if it's more aligned with the one side of the aisle or the other, they're just going to steal votes and allow the opposite side to win. Like if his America Party or whatever it's called does gain real traction, it's likely going to take away from the GOP and just strengthen the Democrats. If it, that's what I think. That's the what it could do. I think I don't really see it becoming a dominant party. The reason why a lot of people try to start these centrist third parties, but they don't work, is because the way that the economy is and the social class structure and the social contract, which I've mentioned in my last video, is kind of broken to the point that you moderate solutions cannot solve relatively extreme problems. Like we were in the 1990s and things were more prosperous and you could get away with being moderate and fixing the little problems when they come, but and doing little tiny tweaks to gradually improve society. But we're not really at that stage of social development at this point. And so, given that we have more radical problems in our society, it's going to result in interest in more radical solutions. So, yeah, that's my base. Like, if it, we'll see which candidate. I'm going to be interested in which candidates get on board with that. But I think anything, it's just likely to be a sabotage of the Republicans if it gains any real traction. What's it called? Thoughts on certain pundits like Tom Luongo and Promethean updates, sort of the U.S. central banking versus the Bank of England. I mean, I barely know who Tom Luongo is. I saw him interviewed on my friend's YouTube channel, Discourses with Christian. If you want like a interesting small YouTube channel that interviews like these kind of doomer type economists, I recommend checking him out. And I don't know who the other guy is. So, yeah. But there's a lot of like, yeah. So, I mean, I don't have that strong enough of opinion. Do you think that mainline Protestant churches can make a comeback? I mean, that's what Redeemed Zoomer hopes for. If you're looking for like a YouTube channel about like issues within Christianity or how the different denominations work, that's fairly objective, I like Redeemed Zoomer. He is a Presbyterian. He's not a Catholic, but I think he's very fair with how he talks about the Catholic Church and other denominations. And that's his whole mission. He's becoming a pastor, particularly to revive the mainline Protestant churches. I think in their current stage, they're likely, I think they're kind of dying. The sad thing is a lot of these mainline churches have very beautiful buildings, like Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. They have a really nice buildings in New York and Chicago. A lot of these Episcopalian cathedrals and churches are in very good locations too. I mean, I think the best use for them would they be bought out either by the non-denominational churches instead of having them celebrate their services in like these strip mall generic looking buildings, or if the Catholic Church grows big enough, they can buy them and use them as churches. I think the architecture is shouldn't be put to waste. But in terms of the actual denominations coming back, I think it's going to be difficult because their base is already very old. They don't really have a message that is different enough from mainstream secular society to really stand out and drive people there. And a lot of people who they should be attracting have already mostly the evangelicals today have already left due to theological differences, and they're unlikely to come back. So, I mean, the way that they would come back is if you got the evangelicals to come back. And I'm not really an expert in inter-Protestantal theology, so I don't really know what the right marketing approach is. But if you want to learn more about that, watch Redeemed Zoomer. Let's see. What's it called? When will you make a video on how to looks max? I'm not going to make a video. This is an economics and finance channel. I don't think I'm going to make that video. I might do as a bonus video for members, like the economics of looks maxing and why that's become a thing, mainly due to the weakening of economic power for young men. They don't feel like they could compete on being a provider for a family, and so now they're competing on looks. And I can go into the drivers and motivation, but I'm not going to go into that specifically. Do you believe what contributes to the downfall of society is elite overproduction? No, I don't think elite overproduction causes the downfall of society. The downfall of societies is usually inability to react to external circumstances, or the existing elites getting too comfortable with their position and pushing policies that cause stratification and ossification and anti-growth. So you're either like a bit like it's like in business, like you're either growing or you're dying. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on that. Like, that's why I think a lot of the NIMBY stuff in the real estate market is dangerous and socially destabilizing. It's why I think having too much regulation on business and entrepreneurship is bad. And yeah, so that's kind of my take on that. You can't, like, what causes is the societies to stagnate and die is the pie shrinking. And depending on the country's economic structure, that's happened into different ways. All right. Do you think that diversity is pushed on major businesses to reduce labor unions from forming? No. Like, if anything, the labor union should embrace diversity so they can convince all the workers from all the backgrounds to consolidate. Yeah, I think that the diversity stuff is more social ideology than economically driven. Let's see. I had some interesting questions. I'm going to scroll up. Advice to someone on the benefiting side of class stratification. So are you somebody who's already in a higher class looking to protect yourself? Is that really the question you're asking? Or are you looking to how to benefit from increased you're already benefiting, or are you looking to benefit? Because those are very different questions. If you already are benefiting from it, then just continue to do what you're doing. If you live in a place that has certain politics that is particularly hostile to different social classes, then maybe you need to keep a lower profile or move to a community that is not as class combative. But I mean, apart from that, you just have to make sure that you're not at risk of the next big shakeup, which is AI going to be replacing a lot of the labor force in multiple classes. And so you want to be somebody who's using AI and robotics to serve your needs and to provide value to the market, rather than you being the one who is replaced by that AI. I think the people who use AI to become the modern yeoman farmers except with a technologically driven business, automated business, they'll prosper. The ones who don't will become unemployable. But that's, again, like a 5 to 20 year time frame. All right. So let's see. Do you see the Republican Party winning the 2028 election? Let's just say J.D. Vance is the leader. As of right now, I think they are the favorites. not necessarily because I think the Republicans are inherently popular. It's more just because the bench on the other side is relatively weak. Gavin Newsom kind of torched his campaign literally with the LA fires. Um, AOC, I think, is the most likable within the party. And if I had to bet on who is going to win the Democratic nominee, it's going to be her. But I don't think she's like appealing enough to win the general election. Like she's too radical, especially on economics, to really, I think, win a general election unless if the economy becomes a complete disaster under Trump. And then the rest of the Democrats are just they're not they don't they can I don't think they can win a primary. I think the only two who can win the primary are Gavin and AOC. The rest of them just have either too many skeletons in the closet or just are not compelling enough personalities. So I think, and if it's AOC winning the nomination, yeah, it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to win. I think in 2032, they're probably going to win for sure, and I think they're going to have a strong midterm in 26. So I don't think they're dead. The other thing is maybe if Elon Musk's party is successful enough and it steals enough votes from Vance, then AOC can slide in too. But yeah, I think that's most likely. Yeah. Let's see. Can you do a video on why different social classes do not hang out with each other? Why do they look down upon and have bad feelings? Well, I mean, it's not really, I don't think there's anything malicious on why they think that's the case. I think that the issue really is that they just have different interests. Like, let's say if one social class people likes to ski and the lower classes can't afford to go skiing, they're not going to be hanging out. Or if they like to travel on vacation to Hawaii and the lower class people can't afford to travel on vacation to Hawaii, they're not going to hang out. I think it's a lot of that. There's a lot of these financial barriers to interclass socialization. Also, a lot of things that are status driven are usually exclusive and limited in capacity, and so it makes them either restrictive by price or restrictive by having certain social connections. The other thing I would say when it comes to that is, yeah, what somebody said in the chat, different priorities. Certain classes work harder than others. And so they're spending more hours at the office, whereas other classes, whether the very high and the very low, have more lives of leisure. So they're not really interacting with these people. So I think it's just more just like what their work schedule inherently is and how they spend their time. How old is too old to move a higher class? I don't think there is a too old if you're willing to take the entrepreneurial path. If you're willing to if you have to do the corporate path, it's probably in your 50s. But yeah, that's but if you assuming you're willing to take entrepreneurial risk, there really is no age that's too old. What do you think about a flat tax regime? Yeah, I think it would be great, honestly. It'd be more equitable and more fair. And if you want to and you're worried about like the lowest people getting taxed too hard, you can say, hey, look, everybody doesn't pay taxes on their first $20,000 or $30,000, but then it's flat every dollar above that. That's probably the way to do it. Speaking of Italians, as you said, Andrea, we are having a meetup in Rome, in Italy, on September 5th, because I'm going to be going there for Catholic Jubilee. And I would love to see either other my Italian subscribers or other European subscribers or just other Catholic pilgrims going to visit for Jubilee. So, yeah, I'd love to see you guys in Rome. Next question, immigration after AI. I think immigration is going to be way lower. Just like there's going to be with the development of robots and AI, it's going to be hard to justify immigration because you don't need humans for cheap labor anymore. It's really going to weaken the case for immigration generally. If you want more of my thoughts on immigration, you should check out my video I did called The Economics of Immigration. where I went into more details about that. And maybe since you couldn't find Discourse with Christian, that's maybe the podcast name. His name is Christian White, Christian E. White. So maybe if you search that on YouTube, you will find it. Do you do career consulting? I do it a little bit. Like I've got a lot of inquiries from it. So like you can, but I do it on a paid basis for people with paid consultations. And if you want, you can sign up for that on Calendly. Let's see. Do you have aspirations to be as big as BlackRock with your money management company? Possibly. I mean, I don't know how big. I don't know if I'll ever get to be as big as BlackRock. I mean, I would like to get at least $1 billion under management, if not like 10 billion under management. BlackRock's in the trillions. I mean, we'll see. Let's start with the goal of getting into the billion AUM club, and then we can worry about getting to the size of BlackRock. But yeah, I would definitely like to grow my firm much bigger than it is now. Let's see. Do you think the USA will disintegrate? No, I will not. If anything, the U.S. is kind of like the Roman Republic was before Caesar. If anything, the U.S. is going to transition from being a democracy to a more authoritarian type state if there's going to be a major political turmoil. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about my specific AUM publicly on the live stream. If you want to know more about that or just learn more about my investment business, feel free to schedule a consultation with me. On the Calendly link, that's what the 15-minute consultations are for people who want to learn more about that. Those are free of charge, or you can fill out my bigger consultation form. But I'm not going to disclose my AUM live. Am I looking to hire? Not at this point. I mean, I would be open to working with advisors who want to build a book with us, but in terms of like regular staff, no, we're not really hiring at the moment. What industries and sectors are you focused on? Well, mostly publicly traded liquid assets, stocks, bonds, options, etc. My specialty is international equities and derivatives personally, whereas the other members of my team tend to focus more on U.S. stocks and bonds. But yeah, that's we generally do everything in the public markets. Yeah. Will you incorporate AI into your everyday company? Yes, I do. AI is a valuable tool that makes me a lot more productive. I do use it for my main business in various ways. Could artificial intelligence lower healthcare costs? Oh, definitely. I'm getting a lot of flood of questions. So if you want to make sure that your question gets asked, please leave a super chat. So I'd love to answer all of them, but I might not be able to get all of them. But if you want to make sure I get it, please leave a super chat. Let's see. Do you think that is accurate to say that America's twin pillars are capital and IP? I am thinking things like tech, chemicals, pharma, defense. Yeah, I think that is pretty accurate. It's the financial industry and the strength of that, and the strength of our innovation, which is technology, are the two biggest strengths. And also the other third pillar you're forgetting is abundance of natural resources. And the fourth one is a single market of a same language, same currency, and culturally similar enough that you could sell your product or service to 300 million people instead of like 10 to 30 million people like in a smaller country. Will real estate start becoming a depreciating asset when population goes down? Yeah, there's a real risk. That's what's happening in Japan. Real estate often declines like cars because the population is going down and the demand is dropping with less younger people to replace the older people who are dying and opening up supply. But I think it'll depend on what city you live in. There'll still be cities in America where real estate appreciates because more people are moving there and then are leaving. But a lot of cities that have particularly average high old ages or are people moving out for economic reasons are going to be flat to depreciating assets. And they'll probably be depreciating versus inflation for sure. I'm not a big fan of selling option premium for income. I'm not going to go into specific investment advice though on this, but I can't really go into more details than that. Do you think AI will make the economy deflationary? In the long run, it should. It depends whether the deflationary gains from AI are covered up by the inflationary policies of deficit spending of the government. Right now, they're about canceling each other out, but those are the two kind of weight and counterweights. Thoughts on the economic future of Japan. I did a video about them about a couple of years ago, and mainly Japan's economic future is how well they utilize their strength as being like the leading country in robotics innovation. If they can continue to be the leaders in robotics innovation, I think that they stand to be a strong country for the foreseeable future. Let's see. Do you think there will be widespread backlash against tech nerds? I don't think tech nerds were ever liked that much to begin with. The only reason people pretended to like them because they had money. So, and as somebody who even though I'm not a tech nerd, I do have a more nerdy personality. And yeah, people generally don't like nerds of any kind, or generally people don't like people who are on the spectrum. And I know that from just anecdotal personal experience and also just what our culture views them. And I think people will flock to the people who are making money, but yeah, that's why tech temporarily became popular, because it was the place that was making money. And as long as they are the place that's making money, they'll continue to be popular. Poverty among educated people, is it their own fault, or is it something wrong with society uses their skills? I think it is generally a lot of their own fault. They either studied the wrong thing that didn't generate any skills, or they're not applying themselves enough. And however, the problem with AI, which I've talked about in my speech I did yesterday here in Newport, was that AI is raising the minimum level of intelligence, education, skills needed to be employable. So maybe if technology advances faster than education rates, it might not be people's fault anymore, because it's going to be hard just for the whole population to keep up. What's it called? What's the minimum monthly income to invest with your company? Reach out to me, please, directly for that. It's not really a minimum net income. It's a minimum that you're saving after taxes and expenses. But yeah, so like that's kind of my take. But generally, like I would say the time to start talking to me is when you're saving. Either you have a relatively large lump sum, or you're saving at least $5,000 a month. But it's dependent on each person's situation. That's why I have people fill out the consultation form, because there is no hard minimums and there's no hard savings rate. It really depends on your age, your financial situation, etc. So if you want to learn more, please contact me directly. All right. Could artificial intelligence increase usage in industries and corporate world lead to higher crime rates? I mean, if artificial intelligence causes a lot of mass poverty, possibly, but it'll also make law enforcement easier too. So I don't really know how those even out. Do you short trade for fun? What do you mean short trade, like short selling or short-term trading? I mean, right now I'm basically all in on my business. I don't really managing any money right now aside from it. So I try to put my money where my mouth is. Like if what I'm doing for my clients isn't good enough for myself, then I shouldn't be doing it. Let's see. Is there a difference between an asset manager and a portfolio manager? Not really. There might be slight minutia differences, but they're very similar. Let's see. An asset manager more refers to the company, whereas a portfolio manager refers to a specific job or a role. That's my real answer to that. I'm not going to answer about the gold market. Let's see. What is your advice on those looking to get employed or graduates? Watch my video about how to make it big in your career. I did several career advice videos about 2 years ago, which goes into that. It also really depends, but my advice I will give on this live is don't pick your career based on what you think is going to be safe or what pays the most in the short term. You should do what you're legitimately interested in and figure out a way that there is a viable career trajectory for that. Like, you don't want to do something where there's no demand whatsoever either, but you want to find that balance on where there's demand in the economy and what you're legitimately interested in. Because if you do something that you don't like, but just for the money, you will burn out fairly quickly. And if you do something you love, but there's no way to monetize it, then you're just going to be a starving artist. So you got to balance those two. Um, let's see. Do you think Turkey has an optimistic future? I think you should. I did a video about Turkey like a few years ago, the economic future of Turkey. I think the problem is their leadership and their politics. Like, if Turkey became like had peaceful transitions of power once again, I think I could get bullish on Turkey. They have all the fundamentals to be a strong country, but I think the management is it's kind of like a company that has a lot of solid economic moats, but not very good management. That's kind of my view on Turkey right now. Um, let's see. Thoughts on, and Turkey also is one of the central banks with the worst track record of price stability. So that's always a concern too. But yeah, I think Turkey has a lot of potential. It's just, I think now is not the time. Let's see. Do you think future tax cuts will be detrimental to the U.S.? If future tax cuts are detrimental, if they are not matched by any sort of cut in spending, that's really, yeah. I mean, it does put it, like, look at what happened when Liz Truss tried to cut taxes when their country was fiscally on the rocks. The bond market didn't take it very well, and it resulted to her having to resign. So I don't know if we're at the Liz Truss inflection point, not, but that's an example of where that is a problem. It depends on how much room we have to go in terms of how much the bond market's going to tolerate deficits. How do you prepare for inheriting money, assuming you're gainfully employed? Well, I mean, you should talk with, does your family have an estate plan already set up? If not, that's step one. And two, you need to have a consultation then with whoever the attorneys are who set that up. Three, you should talk to an advisor, help you on the wealth management side on what you should be doing with that money. That's kind of what I would do at that point. You should just, and then with the taxes, you need to talk to your CPA about what the tax implications are and try to help manage those risks too. So you need to be, I'm assuming you have a material amount of money to inherit. You need to be talking to a tax person that help you with the tax side. You need to talk to a state person, make sure they have the state plan is all good, and talk to a financial advisor. I also would say, if you have siblings that you guys have you have a good relationship with them, talk to them over things to make sure you guys don't get into an ugly legal battle that breaks up your family, both emotionally and financially, because that's probably the biggest risk in terms of managing inheritance. Somebody feels like they're slighted and they try to like mess everything up, and it results in very ugly litigation. I thank you for the super chat. How is Match Group, the company that owns all the major dating apps, has not been sued for antitrust yet? The main reason they haven't is because there's really no barriers to entry to creating a dating app. Anybody can create a dating app. It just requires hiring a few coders to build the basic model and have like a basic algorithm and have a nice UI interface. So that's why, that it's the case. And Match's strategy is simply just acquiring anybody who gets big enough to be a threat. I don't think Match is profitable enough that it's like squeezing some really abnormally large economic rents. So that's also maybe why it's not broken up yet either. But I think that's my take on it, is that there's just no barriers to entry. And they're not really doing anything to keep out competition other than acquiring people once they're at a certain size. And there are other companies, like Bumble is a separate company. I know that. I think the people who own Christian Mingle is also a separate company. So they're not the only players in town. Hopefully that answers your question. I have not read Mark Carney's book, so I don't have a take on it. The network effects are a significant barrier to entry. Yeah, but a lot of people, when they are on dating apps and they're single, they try everything. There's really there's no real reason for these people not to do so. So that's kind of the counter to that. Let's see. The next question do I have here is I'm just scrolling up. Do you think in a widespread AI usage world, entrepreneurship would be more common and less giant big companies? Yeah, because I think families are going to need to be entrepreneurial to survive and thrive, and it will be easier. Like if you can buy a humanoid robot who can do manual labor for less than the price of a car, which I think is very viable in the next few years, and you can do a lot of AI to outsource or lower the cost of white collar work, you could run a firm that used to take like a staff of 100 people with 5 people, and you can do that within like a mom and dad and 3 adult kids. Do that. Like, so I think you're going to have it's going to be the renaissance of family businesses, I think, and entrepreneurship in general. Like one of the biggest barriers to people starting a business is the cost of compliance and the cost of hiring people. And if you can do more with less, it's going to allow more entrepreneurship. And I think that the political will for antitrust enforcement is slowly shifting towards being more aggressive on it. And so I think that will also maybe make big companies less powerful as they were, say, in the 2010s. What do you think about the future of education, college, and the destigmatization of hybrid online learning? I think you're going to have that. I think online education is going to be destigmatized, and you're going to have two classes of college education. You're going to have one group, which are the people who go to college for the social experience and the connections, like the traditional on-campus experience. And that's going to probably continue to be pricey because there's a limited amount of slots because there's only so much space. And given the fact that a lot of these second-tier colleges are going to lose value and prestige, is a lot of reasons, and networking and connections are going to be a lot of reasons why people go to college. The colleges that people actually want to go to are going to shrink. And then the remaining people who just want to get an education in the most cost-efficient way possible can go to those same universities but have like an online-only admission where they can take all the classes, and they might even go to like a local proctor center to take the tests to prevent like academic fraud-related issues. But they won't really be able to go to campus physically and have those benefits. So I think really I think the future outcomes a 2-tiered system for the universities. But I think education on the net, even the classic college experience, is going to get cheaper. I think mainly because of a demographic enrollment cliff. And I think the big, beautiful bill putting caps on how much grad students can borrow is going to implicitly also lower the cost of education because it will limit how much universities can charge in tuition. Let's see. What do you think? Let's see. What do you think? Do you think the U.S. is starting to see Japanification? I think in some corners of the economy it is, but I think it's very preventable too. So, like, I think Europe is more the one who's seeing Japanification right now. And I did a video about this on Europe possibly becoming a third world country a few years ago that goes into the case with Europe stagnating. They've basically regulated themselves to death, and they've also drunk too much of the nihilism pill. And the combination of that has really resulted in not enough young people being born and not enough economic dynamism to grow. Can you unpack your ideas about the counter elites as a counterweight to the establishment class? Yeah, I'll get more into that in a future video, but basically the counter elite are the people who have enough wealth and resources to compete directly with the elite but are excluded from the club due to being new or social ostracization or etc. And they will use the political system to try to basically force out the establishment elite and either become the new establishment or be big enough of a threat that the establishment cordially invites them back into the club to consolidate power. So that's kind of the short of it. But I think I might do it in a video. Thoughts on a receding hairline? I mean, it depends how bad it is, to be quite honest. But like, I know a lot of people like to make fun of my hairline, but it's been pretty stable the last several years. And I know like the genetics of my family of what the likely outcomes are. And so I don't know. I think my hair is fine. As a lot of you guys like to chide me on it, but it depends on what it is now and what the trajectory is. And you can look at like your grandparents on your mother's side generally and your father to see an idea of what your future possibly is for your hairline. And you have to make the right remedies if you don't like what the path is. Where'd you graduate from? I finished my undergrad at UC Santa Barbara. Do you think New York City could still be worth living in the 2030s? Yeah, but I mean, there'll probably be better places to live. I think finance is rapidly moving to Miami. A lot of other industries are moving to other cities. If they elect Zaron, I think what his name is, that's not going to really help matters. And New York simply has this oscillation where they elect some progressive who's very loose on crime, and then things get bad, and so they elect somebody who's tough on crime to fix it. And we've had like this oscillation. You had the weaker mayors in the 80s. Then you had Rudy Giuliani and Bloomberg fix the problems from back then. Then they elect Bill de Blasio, who just gets lax on crime and reverts New York back to where it was before the previous ones. And they elect Eric Adams, who does something to fix the crime. And now we might be repeating the cycle again. So it just seems like New York just can't make up its mind. And do they feel more empathy for the criminals, or do they want to actually be a safe city? So yeah, it's up to the New Yorkers to decide that. Let's see. Next question. What's it called? Bullish on Central Asia. I mean, I don't really know enough about Central Asia's economies to really say. A lot of them are probably natural resource dependent and are very economically integrated with Russia. And so you kind of need to be bullish on Russia to be bullish on Central Asia, unless if they break from them geopolitically. And yeah, they're not really that accessible to international investors. So I haven't really taken the time to research them because of that. Let's see. All right. I'm not going to, let's see. Worst state to move to. I'm moving to the States from the UK after university. It depends what you want out of life. Where do you have social connections? Do you have any family or friends in the States? Because that helps a lot wherever you move to. What's your goal? Do you want to start a business in the States? Do you want to have a good job in the States? Do you want to retire in the States? It's very different, honestly. So, best wealth management system to roll 2 401ks into, which allows you to loan it against the 401k. Generally, if they're previous employers, you should roll them into a self-directed IRA. That's the general answer for that. But again, this is not investment advice. Please do your own research or contact an advisor to help you. But yeah, I mean, I would say honestly, what my least favorite state that I'd want to live in, but that might not really apply to you. So please give me more information. If you're white collar, I have family in New York and Massachusetts. I'm doing a journalism master's. Well, you should go to whatever school is going to give you the best preparation for your career in journalism, wherever that is. And the worst state to live in will be the one that doesn't do that. Probably for your situation, it'd probably be Alaska, just because it's so far remote and there's probably not that many jobs or things for you to do. But for somebody who's likes an outdoor lifestyle and wants lower taxes and works in the energy industry, Alaska's fantastic. So yeah, but let's see. Um, so yeah, it really kind of just depends. That's all right. Next question. What do you think about rewriting marriage law? How helpful will it be for fertility, or maybe making one with big tax write-offs? Well, you could do it out of the way it works in a lot of European countries like Switzerland, where or Italy, where basically you can have like what a lot of things that people have like in a prenup, like premarital assets being separate, built into the contract from day one, so you don't have to go through the awkward process of dealing with prenups. That would be kind of one solution. The other thing is, is you could basically have different. If you're going to have a no fault divorce, you have different payout structures in terms of what the split of assets are, so that somebody just doesn't get blindsided unfairly one way or the other. But so I think there is room to change the marriage laws to make them more fair and more attractive for people to get married. The hows is more like analyzing law with Nick than analyzing finance with Nick, so I'm not going to get too much for it. Is it possible the Balkans to ever catch up to Western Europe, or are they stuck forever? Oh, it's easily possible. If they do the right economic policies, they can. And if they prioritize education, they can. Like Poland's a good example. Poland was way behind, and it's on track to pass the UK in GDP per capita. So if Poland can do it, why can't the Balkans do it? So that's my answer to that. Any advice for a 20-year-old working 9 to 5 and studying part-time? Well, at that point, it depends how much assets you have, but if you're just saving at that age, just save as much as you can. And it's not, I'm not going to go, again, I don't really want to get into specific investment advice, but yeah, it's just basically save and do relatively diversified low cost investments until your asset amount is big enough that it needs a more bespoke approach. Let's see. What do you read on the daily to get such a vast understanding of multiple fields? I read a lot of books. I read a lot of research from Wall Street organizations and third-party research providers. I check all the stock charts of every company or commodity or bond that I follow, and the price action often tells me where to look to dive deeper. I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts. I have a custom RSS feed with various things on the internet I search, and an X feed that I read from as well. So yeah, it's a variety of sources. I might do a separate video dedicated to that. I did go through my bookshelf in a previous one of these lives. Where do you think we are on the Laffer curve? I have no idea where we are on the Laffer curve at this point. That's kind of the $1 trillion question. Let's see. I'd like to move to a mountain state. However, jobs are few. I prefer an in-person job. Any advice? Well, some of the mountain states have big cities where you can get good jobs. Like Colorado's got Denver. Utah has Salt Lake, which is rapidly growing as a metro area. If you want to go to the more rural ones like Montana and Wyoming and Idaho, there are some jobs in Boise and Bozeman, but they're small. You probably would need, if you want like a California or Texas or like New York level income, or like you're going to need to probably have a remote job realistically in a lot of those places. Thoughts on MBA? Is it viable in today's market? I generally think that MBAs are not worth it unless if you have one of two things. three situations, actually. One, if your company or employer is paying for it. Two, you specifically need to switch careers. Like career switchers are the ones who most benefit. Say, like example, you work in investment banking, but you want to be a management consultant. It's very hard to make that switch without an MBA, whereas an MBA provides a very plausible entry point and skill pivot, or at least selling it as a narrative, at least to sell as a skill pivot to switch. Or three, you get into one of the top 10 MBA programs in the United States, or a few international equivalents. Other than that, I'm generally against MBAs. Are you a WASP? No, first of all, I'm not Protestant, so that takes out the P. Second, I do have some English descent, but I'm only 1/8 English by blood. Most of my ancestry is in Southwestern Europe. So it's Swiss, Italian, and Portuguese. So I'm not really a WASP, and I wasn't really in my family. Even though I have some English blood, most of my family, I was raised based on the traditions of the other ethnic backgrounds in my family. Do you see yourself leaving the U.S.? Yeah, if I think the U.S. is going to fail, then I would leave. Or if they made the business and tax environment so prohibitive to be competitively viable, I would consider leaving. Or like for some reason, like there are certain other countries that I do have in mind, they become a lot better places to live. But ideally, I would not want to leave the United States. Honestly, I wouldn't even want to leave California. I'd rather probably go out overseas than live in most of other states in the union for various reasons. But yeah, I don't really see myself going anywhere. Let's see. How did you come up with your unique way of explaining finance, especially by connecting with topics and culture? Well, I'm just curious about things other than finance. About half the books I've read in my adult life are finance and economics related, and half are others, and they're all nonfiction. So I have a very broad knowledge of a lot of different things. And I've had friends and family who've asked me to explain a lot of this stuff before, so I'm pretty good at explaining a lot of these things. So that might be it, but I have a unique personality. Thoughts on the future of housing in Orange County with rents and prices skyrocketing? Will it be only for the rich? Do you see lower income cities in OC getting gentrified? I do see some of the lower income cities getting gentrified. I'm surprised West Side Costa Mesa has not gotten gentrified yet. It probably should have, given its relatively good location and where it's next to. And I think there's probably some room in certain parts of Huntington Beach as well to be gentrified. Yeah. So I think that's kind of my take on the gentrification part. In terms of Orange County real estate, I mean, unless if you have a giant surge of immigration, that's eventually going to drop just because of demographics. Orange County is fairly old, and you're going to have a large increase in inventory every year just by deaths outnumbering new family formation by large margins. I just know from my peers, most of the people I grew up with left to move to people so they can afford to buy a house or for job opportunities or other places. And it's when a lot of this current generation who's owning most of the property here is on to the afterlife, there's going to be a lot of openings, and that's going to probably put a lid on housing prices. It's just a matter of when that waterfall comes. Yeah, speaking of my August meetups, I have two somebody asked me about it. I have two meetups coming up in America in August in Northern California. One is going to be in Fresno on the 19th, and the other one is going to be in Santa Cruz, California. Since these are going to be bigger ones, Fresno I'm actually going to be doing with that YouTuber I mentioned, Christian White. He's going to be my co-speaker. And the one in Santa Cruz, I'm going to usually have a prepared speech of a various topic, and I try to keep them fresh. So that's why I don't know what it's going to be in advance. And then I leave it open to like public, like private Q&A where you can talk to me about anything in person. It's a good chance to meet other like-minded people within your local communities who like this channel and have similar ideas. And speaking of other meetups, since I'm on the topic of meetups, we're having one in Seattle on July 26th. We just got the venue. It's going to be at Pike's Place. I'm really excited for it. And then we're going to be doing meetups in Europe. I've got 4 of them. The first one is Amsterdam on August 30th. The second one is going to be in Zurich on September 2nd. We got Geneva on September 3rd. And then last but not least, which I mentioned before on this live stream, we got Rome on September 5th. As the guy who asked me about the UK, if it happens, the earliest will be 2026. I don't have big enough of an audience right now in the UK to do a meetup there. So, but maybe I would one day. In terms of international, the most likely international destination I'm going to have a meetup in 26 will be in Australia. I don't have any set dates for that yet, but I have personal reasons to be out down under next year. And so I'd love to do a meetup. What is the farthest somebody traveled to attend one of your meetups? I mean, I've had people travel from California to Texas and Miami for meetups. So I would say that's the farthest in terms of distance. And then I've had people from Northern California come to the Southern California meetups, and people from other cities within the general metro area. But yeah, that's kind of the farthest I've had people come, is mainly just from other states in the California mainly. A lot of my California friends like to come to the meetups because they get to meet new friends in cities that they like to visit. And I've had that happen. Like, a good friend of mine from here in California came with me to the 2 Texas meetups, and now he has a new social circle in both Dallas and Austin. So yeah, that's generally the people who do kind of come. Do you think Las Vegas has peaked? I read they're having a really bad year. I think it's possible. Vegas, its benefit is that it's cheap real estate and very affordable cost of living. And also it's got the gaming industry, which continues to grow. But it's very economically cyclical now because they've made themselves a more premium tourist destination. So it's not, it used to be a place where people go when they couldn't afford to go anywhere else, like pre-2008. But they've since upscaled Vegas. And so it's not really the low-cost vacation opportunity like it used to be. So, yeah, there's a risk of that. But I think Vegas is going to continue to grow because retirees who continue to move there, and remote worker professionals will continue to move there because of affordability. Is boomer bashing justified, or do they get a bad rap? I think there's some bashing that is justified, but at the same time, a lot of these boomers that these people bash are the parents of the people who bash them. Do they all hate their families? Like, I've said a lot of criticism of boomers, but both of my parents are boomers. So, and there are plenty of boomers who are looking out for the best interests of their families, including my own parents. So they're not all bad, but on the aggregate, a lot of their policies that they voted for tend to be very self-serving and self-destructive in the long run. I did my discussion on boomers. I reacted to What If Alt Hist's video bashing the boomers. So if you want my more nuanced take on the boomers, I recommend watching those movies. Would you rather advise others be secretly rich or show off with status symbols such as expensive cars and clothes? It depends where you live. If you live in a place where showing off is going to risk your personal safety, like you're going to get physically attacked or people will try to hunt you down, then yeah, you need to be a little bit more casual about that and be more low key and just go to private exclusive vacation destinations. If you're in a place where you don't have to worry about that, then it's just a personal preference. Some people like to live more understated. Some people like to live a little bit more flashy. The thing is that if you do go the more flashy route, a lot of the old money crowd is going to find you tacky. And a lot of the upper middle class is going to find you to be tacky as well. So there is some possible negative, but the middle class and the lower class are going to think you're cool. So there are certain trade-offs for that kind of thing. I generally say do what you want. And like, I wouldn't say like, I think false modesty is not a good thing either. And it's often a red flag, like SBF, and he drove the beat up car to make it look like he was some effective altruist, everyday guy. I'm very suspicious of really rich people who try to overplay the modesty. So like, I've met a few billionaires personally, and there's some things they're very low profile and some other things they're very high profile and flashy. It's not unilateral necessarily. And so, yeah, I think that just do what you actually want to do. Like if you want to drive the sports car and you can afford it, go ahead. I personally, if I had status symbols, I'd focus on having a nice house and a large family and having the help needed to, so that like my future wife's not too stressed out raising that family. But and then nice vacations, and preferably taking like my extended family with me on nice vacations. And yeah, and higher inconveniences, like using money to make your life more efficient. Like instead of doing your own chores, hiring people to do your chores, like that, or instead of like spending time trying to save money, you could spend money to save time. That's another way I think you can use your money in a way that will improve your quality of life and is kind of a low-key status symbol as well. Yeah. Let's see. Thoughts on imminent full AI automation of knowledge work. I've talked about this earlier in the chat, and I've done several videos about it. I think AI is going to probably eliminate 30 to 40% of knowledge workers within the next 10 to 20 years, but it's not going to eliminate all of them. I think short-term treasury bills are fine. Like, I don't think they're at risk, if that's what you're trying to ask. Do you think a federation of worker cooperatives and credit unions could create regional powerhouses rivaling private investment banks? Or is that wishful thinking? I mean, there are credit unions that do rival private banks already, but the nature of them is that given their ownership structure, they're kind of limited on how big they can scale. Yeah, that's kind of my answer. But banking is kind of like the one sector in terms of my investment acumen that I'm not as strong as at those in that in healthcare. When does the monetary system reset? How does one get ahead of working 3 jobs and the inflation rate higher than wage increases, work more hours or earn more per hour? I mean, the money system resets is when there's either a sovereign default or the dominant power where the reserve country loses a war against another great power. I don't really see any of those immediately happening. And if you want to get ahead in terms of inflation, you need to invest in assets or build a business that is going to benefit from where the money is flowing. But like, I don't think inflation can sustainably grow higher than wages, because at a point it wouldn't make sense for anybody to work. Like, and it would ultimately result in a recession, and then the inflation rate comes down. And also, assuming you have a central bank that's actually willing to tighten money when inflation gets too high, which fortunately for all the faults of the Fed, Powell did the right thing. And maybe he's a little late, but he did raise rates and he kept them high to basically choke off what could have been an inflationary spiral. Would you create a video about the dollar value of which skills to have, like video game, like an RPG? I could, but I'd have to think really hard about what those actually are, because I don't know all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to know like what skills are going to be the ones that are worth it. But if I could come up with a good one, that would be that'd be a very good video idea. Do you think international investors investing in OC more will cause OC price growth? No, because you're going to have less people. There's less people moving from international, because the demographic problem is a global one. It's not just a U.S. one, especially in the countries where people have the money to afford to buy these properties. I mean, at a certain point, the price also get too high that a lot of traditional international destinations like Switzerland will become price competitive, if not cheaper than Orange County. So there's limits to that. What would you study in college if you had your brain wiped, but you kept your business acumen? Like, what do you mean my brain wiped? Like, I lose like all my personality and my hobbies and interests. Let's just say I have no genuine interest in finance anymore. I probably would have worked in the robotics or AI industry, but that wasn't a thing when I was in college. But I also wasn't that great of an engineer type mind either. So that would probably be thing or some that'd probably be the industry to get into. You want to be the one who's building the job replacement technologies, not the one who's going to be replaced by the job replacement technologies or selling them. Do you think the US dollar will continue to lose value? How low will it fall against the euro? Well, let me look at what it's trading at right now, just so that I don't sound stupid when I answer your question. Like currently the euro is at 117. The fair value of the euro is like 118 to 120. So I mean, it has a little bit of room, I think, but in general, I'm not. I mean, I think that the dollar is gonna slow. It depends on each currency, and I don't want to go civic investment advice, so I gotta be careful. But I generally think the dollar has some more room to weaken, but it's not as compelling of an idea as it was when I was speaking about it a few months ago at my events. And I did the video about like, are you too invested in America? That go into my full thesis on that if you want. But yeah, it's just say the dollar's dropped a lot since then, so I don't think the dollar bear thesis isn't as compelling as it used to be. But I'm not saying go long the dollar either. Let's see. Do you think conspicuous consumption is useful to help allocate labor and other resources? No, I don't. Honestly, I mean, it is interesting as a market signal to find where do you think people are being the most overpaid relative to their talent and skills, because that usually means there's a bubble there, and you want to get out of that investment hypothetically. If anything, that would be a signal. I mean, I think wages are a signal though. Like if wages are going up in a particular section of the economy, it means there's clear demand for that, and it's not. So I think consumption can be a product of bad spending habits too. You can be racking up your credit card and living on debt. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are in a very dynamic section of the economy. So, yeah. Let's see. Next question. How do you reconcile being rich while the world around you is crumbling? First of all, you gotta let me think about this so I can put it in a way that makes it clear as possible. I don't really think it's your fault that the world is crumbling, is probably the way I would say this. If the world truly is crumbling, which I tend to be skeptical, it's funny because like I don't think of myself as like this super hardcore optimist, but compared to a lot of the doomers here on YouTube and on podcasts or other things, I come off that way. And maybe because my incentives are a little different. And since I do run a wealth management firm, I would love to have you guys all successful because then you could afford to be my clients. Whereas a lot of these doomers benefit more from just short-term eyeballs and ad revenue. So maybe my incentives are a little different. But in general, I think that that you just don't. I don't think that the world collapsing is your fault. I would only really feel like there'd be a guilt component is if your business or the way you got rich directly contributed to the social decline. So let's just say you have a society that's struggling with addiction and you are selling the thing that people are addicted to, then yeah, you can't really reconcile that. Or if you are worried about moral decay, yet you made money off of things that cause moral decay. That's not really reconcilable. But assuming that you're not doing something like that, then there is not really there really isn't a reason to feel guilty. You're contributing to the economy, and what you should do, if you're really concerned about it, is that you should try to make society a better place. Like, instead of trying to vote for politicians to do the work for you, why don't you go and volunteer in your community or donate money to the causes that you think will actually make a difference to make society better, instead of just saying, woe is me, enjoy the decline. So, like, to reconcile that is you try to be involved as part of the solution, not the problem. What is the largest sum lower limit you are willing to consider as a potential client? So, like, you have a lump sum and you're not contributing. Generally, it's about 500,000 USD, but it varies. So that's why I don't like to give a hard number. And if you want to talk to me specifically about that kind of stuff, oh no, that's not wrong link. Sorry, that's you just contact me directly for a consultation, and we can talk more specifically. And then I also will put a link to my Calendly, and that's what the 15-minute consultation is for on the Calendly, is for these types of things. Yeah. Let's see. How do you think Trump's second term is going so far? I think it's too early to say, honestly. I'm not a fan of some of the tariff stuff, to be quite honest. And I think that on immigration, I think I would have had a different plan of attack of how to go about his goal. But yeah, I'm just gonna kind of sit and watch and see kind of how it unfolds at this point. I don't want to make any definitive conclusions, because every time I feel like there is one, he flips on a dime. So I'm just gonna observe. Ask me that question January 1st or 26th, and I think I'll have a stronger view. If you had to assemble an ultimate team of investors to manage your fund, who would it be? Quant, value, anything. I think I would put on there Stan Druckenmiller would be one. He's probably one of the better all-time investors overall, and especially in terms of global macro. I'd put myself and my business partner on that team as well, but just because I have a good relationship working with him, and I think he covers a lot of my holes. The other, I would put probably Peter Lynch in his prime. He's very good at the more individual company type analysis. I'm trying to think who else I would put on there. Howard, I'd probably put a bond guy, but I'm trying to think who that would be. And then I would probably put Charlie Munger on there as well. I think Charlie Munger would be a good addition to cover the value side. And Gunlock. Yeah. Thank you for that one. That's probably the bond guy. So I have Gunlock, Charlie Munger, Strand Druckenmiller, and what's it called? I need an options vault person too. So, but yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. I'll have to come back to it. And then let's see. For someone as a senior in college, what part of the financial industry should you try to break into? Break into what you actually find legitimately interesting. That's your answer. thought on Besant's performance Secretary Treasury. I would not put Kevin O'Leary on that one. So I think that he is doing a good job. Honestly, I think Besant, especially given dealing with a cantankerous personality like Trump can often be, he is doing a very good job. Jim Simons, yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, probably should one of the Renaissance guys on there because they're the best quants. So yeah, I probably that is probably a good one. But yeah, let me go back to that. Maybe I should make a separate video about the investment Pokemon team or Mount Rushmore because I really want to think this out, not just have to like just spontaneously come up with because there's so many there's like 30 or 40 people who I think could fit in that category. So it's hard to narrow it down to 6. On my tier list, I've tried to make tier list videos before, but they generally kind of boring. And it's because like unless if you summarize each item on the tier list in under 30 seconds, the video just drags out way too long. And it just does not smooth. I just think Munger was better than Buffett. That's simple. Simple as that. I think they're both good, but I think Munger was the better investing mind. Is factor investing dead? I don't really do factor investing. I myself, my firm, my partner is the one who handles that. So like I kind of don't have a strong opinion. Thoughts on management consulting? Is it all a scam? How do you get a job at a big management consulting firm? So if you think it's a scam, why do you want a job there? But maybe I'm being a little bit too tongue-in-cheek, but I think management consulting, a lot of it is validation for what a CEO already wants to do or a C-suite executive. They say they have a plan to restructure a company or initiate a new product or service, but they're not sure if they can get everybody on the management team or the board to go online with it. What they would do is that they would hire McKinsey or Bain to go in and say, hey, look, CEO Nick's plan is awesome. You should do it because of X, Y, and Z. And that McKinsey stamp of approval just boosts your credibility for your ideas. So I think there's a lot of that going on. But they also do a lot of deep dive research on certain things that you just don't have time for as a company. And I think if every company replicates the MBB recommendation strategies, then it kind of does become commoditized and their value is diminished. So they need to provide actual things that are unique to keep their role. And they do help sometimes with the minutia and the grind. And a lot of ex-management consulting people become the future corporate strategy and C-suite executives for a lot of these big companies. So there is some sort of a pipeline indirectly. Yeah. Let's see. All right. My spouse is one of the best at the world at her job. I think she's underpaid, but she moves to another company in the same business that might be viewed negatively. Should she move companies or abandon the field? I mean, why would she be viewed negatively for switching to another company? I don't really get that. That's my question. Like, if the reason why that would be the case is really depends on my answer. Where would you place yourself on the political spectrum? How about I let you guys guess? Where do you think I'm? Write in the comment. Where do you think I am on the political spectrum? I'd love to hear what you guys think. I mean, this channel isn't inherently political, but I don't really hide my views on things because it kind of a lot of finance and economics are political. I actually did a video called Macroeconomics is Political, which kind of goes into it. Next question is what will the average lifespan be in 50 years? I mean, I think it'll be longer, but what we've struggled to is that a lot of the life expectancy gains have mainly been due to the removal of certain people dying early from various diseases like heart disease and infant mortality and stuff like that. We really haven't lengthened the ceiling. The ceiling's been like at a hard 120 years for basically entirely human history. We may have seen like 1 or 2 people ever break 120. And So in theory, like we might be able to get to the average age being we're already for the top 10% of income earners in America, the average lifespan is about 89 right now. So if everybody has the same health quality as the top 50 years from now, as the top 10% do now, I think it'll be early 90s is my guess for what the life expectancy should go up to. And if we find some breakthrough technology that expands like the peak health span, like the maximum life to beyond 120, then it could go a lot farther than that. But if I had to guess on it, I'd say it'd be about like 92, 93. Let's see. Would you ever move to Florida? I mean, I've thought about it. I prefer, what's it called? California for personal reasons and for climate reasons too. And with the recent increase in prices of real estate in South Florida, the spread isn't really wide enough that I would even be saving that much money, to be quite honest. That's kind of my take on that. So yeah, and I think somebody asked me like, what do I like about California back earlier in the chat, and I will answer that. There's a lot of things I like about California. One, I like the climate here. I am very sensitive to climate. I don't like extreme heat and humidity. I don't like extreme cold. And basically, extreme cold for me is like below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And extreme heat for me is basically above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And with humidity, it might even be lower. So I like moderate weather. Second, I like my family is mostly here in California, both immediate and extended family. And having that social support system is very helpful to the quality of my life. That too. Three, as an entrepreneur, there's still a lot of opportunities here to grow a business. Like the market size and the amount of wealth here is really good place to build a company of any kind, not just the industry I'm in. So it's a very entrepreneurial vibe. People will support that more than other parts of the world where you're kind of more supposed to like toe the line and stay in your lane. And Orange County, for those who aren't familiar, is very different culturally than the rest of the state. Like basically, what I love about California is basically what is south of Long Beach and west of the 5 freeway. Like east of the 5 and north of north of Long Beach is a very different state. And I would not really live in California really outside of my little bubble here personally. But that's the one kind of also caveat is that people who are not from California don't understand the diversity of the geographic and cultural diversity of this state. Not everywhere is San Francisco. Not everywhere is LA. Yeah. So that's kind of the perks of California, really honestly. And also, and also like the cost of living in other places is rapidly catching up to California. And I think California will eventually do the right thing and become more competitive in the long run. But yeah, in general, it's a very high quality of life, especially if you live in Orange County. So it's very hard to give that up. I've traveled to 48 states in the United States now. And the only 2 I have left are in Kansas and Missouri, which in May of next year, I'll actually be having my 50-state party in Kansas City, Kansas, if you guys want to come. I already have a link to the Eventbrite page, but I'll do more updates on that. Yeah. Next question. What's it called? What do you mean about asking about Orange County? Like Orange County, California. It's what is it? Like, where is it? It's, yeah. And let's see. Have dating apps harmed relationship dynamics in Southern California? I don't really know if they've affected Southern California disproportionately more than anywhere else. I think they might have affected the West Coast more than anywhere else because the West Coast tends to adopt technology a little bit faster than other places. So a lot of the social ills that a lot of YouTubers complain about when it comes to dating apps, they came here first before they spread to other parts of the country and the world. California is often a leading indicator in terms of the embracing of technologies and social trends, good and bad. So in terms of how it directly is different in Southern California, that's what it would be. Is that it's just the side effects came quicker. What do you think of the tech layoffs? I think it's a product of AI replacing a lot of jobs. I make question. I make 7 to 9K month online. Should I continue living in New York or while being locked as a second class citizen and go to where I'm valued? What do you mean where I am where you are valued? That's kind of the key question. Like, I don't really know your entire financial situation. If you want to, again, talk to me more, I recommend scheduling a consultation and contacting me directly, because this seems like a question that's too personalized for me to talk about on a live stream. So like, that's kind of my take on that. What are your thoughts about New Mexico? If you were not there too long ago, I went to New Mexico in 2020 as part of like a road trip through the Mountain West. I went to Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and Santa Fe is kind of like Laguna Beach, but in the desert. It's like this art colony type place where it's very politically progressive and like very like artsy and relatively high income, but it's also very small town and parochial at the same time. A lot of these old money people like going to these art colony type places, and Santa Fe is one of them. I think it's fun to visit. I don't think I would live in New Mexico because it's just too small. Like, there's not enough of like things going on there from like a entertainment perspective or from a business perspective. If you're an ambitious person looking to build something, like, it probably is a good place to retire because it is relatively mild climate in New Mexico, particularly Santa Fe. But I don't think if you're trying to like make it big or do something, I wouldn't really recommend living in New Mexico. I think it's more suited for retirees. I think it's fun to visit though. Like, the hot air balloons are really fun. I did that in Albuquerque, and New Mexican food is just kind of like regular Mexican food, but they add red and green sauce to everything. Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, if I had to live in the desert, I'd live in Arizona personally. Phoenix and Scottsdale, I think, is a nicer city personally than to live in than Santa Fe, and there's more to do there. And it's also has a big airport, so I have more access to other places. And it's even driving distance to California. So if I really need to get out of the heat and visit my relatives, I can do so. BlackRock and Vanguard, do they control the world? No. You watch my video I did about this, where I fully explain my thoughts on BlackRock and Vanguard. Basically, they're kind of like property managers in the real estate world. Like, they on paper it shows they own a bunch of things, but they own they basically create ETFs where shareholders buy them, and they're the ones who just manage it and like make sure your dividends get paid and that it's liquid and you could sell it and administrate it. They don't actually own it. The shareholder, the person who buys the shares of SPY, for example, or QQQ, or VEA, or VGA, or whatever these major companies' indexes are, the X or the spiders sector ETFs. They manage it. You own it. So where I'm not discriminated racially, okay. I mean, where do you think that would be? Because America, like, compared to a lot of other places, is a lot less discriminatory. So thoughts on Germany and MERS? I mean, looks like they're actually going to try to boost their defense spending. And I'm not really sure if they're not willing to really deal with the structural immigration problem. So that's kind of the issue that they have. So if they're not willing to deal with that, AFD is going to continue to get more popular, and they're going to continue to be a mess politically. And so that's kind of my take. Yeah. So that's kind of, I still think Germany has structural issues. See my video, The Economic Future of Germany, from one of my thoughts. I don't think they've really done enough to deal with any of those. Have they brought back their hope? They need to bring back their nuclear power and expand it. They need to be more willing to use conventional energy. Solar is not going to work for a cloudy country like Germany. They need to get their electricity costs severely down to make their manufacturing competitive again. And yeah, they need to probably have some, like, I don't think just spending on military is going to solve all their problems. They need to still work on their competitiveness. What is the number one country that whose economy is underrated? That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of underrated countries economically right now. I think Chile is underrated. I think Uruguay is underrated. I think Spain is underrated. I think the Scandinavian countries, a lot of them are actually underrated, even with their socialist economic systems. I think Poland is underrated. That's probably the most underrated, are Poland and Czechia, if I had to think of single countries. But yeah, where is the oldest money in the OC? It's probably in Laguna Beach or in Old Newport. If I had to get an Orange, those are probably the three places. What type of business could be started in Switzerland? I've never really tried to start a business in Switzerland, so I don't really know what their regulatory laws are, but is usually probably want something that's service heavy and not reliant on low skilled labor, because the wages are quite high there. What are your thoughts on working in the Big Four, becoming a CPA, and opening your tax firm? Like, if you're interested in accounting, go for it. If you're doing it just for job stability, not AI, it's kind of, accounting ranks high on the AI disruption list generally in terms of risk. So you got to factor that in. Yeah. Thoughts on NYC and its socialist mayor? Well, hopefully somebody else is able to come up on the top in the general election. But yeah, I think he's going to be similar to de Blasio. He's going to be a worse version of Bill de Blasio, if I had to guess. And the crime's going to go up in New York, and more people are going to move out, and they'll elect somebody who's actually tough on crime, and the cycle will reset again. Could one make an asset manager alternative to BlackRock that offers ETFs incentivizing growth of its managed companies like VC instead of seeking quarterly returns? I mean, the ETFs don't try to seek quarterly returns. A lot of them are just passive vehicles. But so I don't really, I mean, are you talking about like an actively managed fund? That's what those are essentially. They are actively managed ETFs. It's just like, I mean, their goal isn't quarterly returns. Their goal is to mimic an index and to create exposure to a certain risk in the market. Most of these ETFs, actively managed funds, yeah, there are certain ones that are more long-term focused. The thing that has to change is investor preferences. A lot of investors will just look at what, especially in the hedge fund world, like, what did you do last quarter, or what did you do the last year? And if they don't like it, they switch. So the investors need to be more, if they actually do prioritize long-term returns, they need to put their money where their mouth is. And the market will adjust. Do you specifically focus on individual stocks? I don't just do individual stocks. I also invest in sector ETFs or other ETFs, depending on that, and bonds and other assets that make sense. Whatever we think is the best as a fiduciary, whatever I think is the best investment and the best interest for my clients. Let's see. Schooling, is it worth it? I live in general labor, but number go up is appealing. Well, if you're going to go to school, you got to have a reason. What are you trying to learn? What is it going to do that's going to lead to a better quality of life? If you can have like a defined plan, that it's probably worth it if the numbers make sense. If not, then if you're just trying to do it just to say you have a degree, doesn't really make sense. I generally still think people, once they're out of high school, should go to college. I'm on the exact opposite of most of the right, who's encouraging everybody to go to trade schools and things like that. because those people are also at risk of humanoid robotics replacing them. It's not just it's not just the white collar who's at risk of AI, which I think is the giant myth going on. Yeah. When do you think somebody is ready to buy a pricey watch? I mean, the nicest watch I have, I inherited from my grandfather, and it's like having a piece of my grandfather with me. So I don't think I'd ever buy a fancier watch because I like having my grandpa's watch from the 50s. So I'm not the one to ask for that personally. But when's the time you can afford it? Basically, when you can spend the money on that watch and not have to either finance it with debt or not have to deter from your savings plan. So, say for example, you want to buy a Rolex and it costs $30,000 and you're saving $10,000 a month, your net of everything in your retirement savings plan for is $5,000 a month. And the rest of that is discretionary money. So instead of like using discretionary money to go out to eat or to go on a vacation, you can save that for 6 months and buy a watch. That's how you can afford it if you really want the watch. Does it make sense to have a 529 and an UGMA? Seems 529 will take away from compounding gains. I mean, the tax benefits are very helpful. I think the big beautiful bill might be changing some things with that, with this Trump fund or whatever. And I have to read into more of it. So if you asked me this like a week ago, I'd have a very different answer. But given the legislation changes that have happened lately, I think it does affect what's going on with about the investments in 529s and UTMAs. So I'll have to get back to that. Do you think that young people should have allocation to fixed income? Yes, I do. If this was 5 years ago, I'd say no, because rates were zero and you weren't getting compensated for the risk. But now with equity valuations relatively high and interest rates and fixed income products actually being fairly good, I think there definitely is a role for fixed income in portfolios for younger people. Yeah. Could you talk about the geography of wealth in Houston? I don't know that much about Houston, honestly. I've only been there when I was a very young child, so I have no memory of Houston personally. I don't really know that many people in Houston. I could just read about it and look at the Zillow and take a guess, but I try to do these geography of wealth videos. I try to have like more anecdotal or just actual, like, I don't know, boots on the ground type knowledge that's beyond just me running a query, an AI, or Google searching it. So that's why I haven't done the Southeast yet. I've done Austin. I've done Dallas already in one of the videos, but I haven't done Austin or Houston yet. Like, I think the next one I'm going to do for that series is I'm going to finish the vacation destinations. But if I was going to do another region, it's probably Europe. So any Australia insights? Like, what do you mean by Australian insights? With the U.S. Debt increasing and the dollar becoming less valuable, will this alone signify merely increase the price of the S&P 500 over the years? Low inflation is generally good for markets because it forces people to go out on the risk curve. But once inflation gets too high, it's actually bad for markets because it directly starts to eat into margins of companies and real earnings start to decline. Like we saw this in 2022 bear market. We didn't really have a recession, but inflation got high enough that it started to really eat into the bottom line for companies. So, yeah. Again, I'm going to do a whole video about BBB because I've seen like a lot of questions on it, and I'm not sufficiently informed enough to really have a definitive answer on it. But I think I will record a video, whether just one directly this week or do it as my speech for the LA meetup and then release the recording of my LA meetup. Is being a USA citizen the best place to be if you're a millionaire, taking everything into account like taxes, security, real estate, inheritance? I mean, it's either the US, Switzerland, Singapore. Yeah, those are probably the best three. I think and I did a video about this called "Why the U.S. is the Country Club of the Rich," where I went into details on why that is the case. So I'm not going to answer that whole thing there. I just recommend watching that video. Is the U.S. the country club of the rich? Because I go into the reasons why it's generally a beneficial place to be wealthy. Let's see. I'm going to be probably doing this live for about 10 more minutes. So if you want to get your questions in, please do so. And I also look forward to seeing you guys all at the upcoming meetups, which I mentioned before in Fresno, Santa Cruz, Seattle, Zurich, Bern, Amsterdam, and Rome this summer. And also, if you have any direct questions for me, feel free to reach out to me via my Calendly or my consultation. And for those who want to vote on where I go in the future, because I have all the destinations already set, I think, for 2025. But given how well the tour has been going and how much fun I've had exploring America and a lot of the world actually through it, I'm going to do another tour in 2026. And if you want to contribute on where I go there, feel free to vote through that form right there. I think the last one I'm going to do this year is probably Boston or DC. I'm still trying to figure out. I'm supposed to go to another conference and speak out there, and I'm trying to line it up with that. That's why I don't have a set date for DC. But I'm going to probably do one more Northeast swing before I wrap things up for the year after the Europe ones. Over time, we're becoming more or less optimistic of the future of the U.S. I'm becoming more optimistic because we're kind of going through the fourth turning right now. It started in 2008, and it's likely to bottom out at the end of this decade. So I'm actually becoming more optimistic. It seems like a lot of the structural headwinds that were causing all the problems, whether it's too much red tape, boomers being obstacles to progress, et cetera, are likely to clear out. And so, yeah, that's so I'm generally more optimistic as I got older. Like I became during the financial crisis was during some of my formative years. And so it made me have a predisposition that was a little probably too bearish and pessimistic. And I've been slowly growing out of it as I've seen the doomer incomes not happen as feared. I did a video about this in the Debunking the Doomer series about why I'm no longer a doomer. Are you bullish on California? Depends on the time frame. The next 5 years, no. The next 20, yes. Watch my videos I did with Chris Street for more on my thoughts on California. I've done several videos about California on this channel. But I'm generally optimistic long-term of California. Are you bullish Pokemon cards? I stopped trading Pokemon cards in the 5th grade. That's where I hadn't dealt with my first speculative bubble in my financial career, was when I traded Pokemon cards. Made a lot of money and lost it all back. I remember those days. It was fun. It was fun to be like a young kid during the peak of the first Pokemon card era. Those are some of my best childhood memories, even though I went, even though I learned what a bubble was the hard way, but it was still fun. Let's see. Are you bullish on the Canadian dollar and US? I'm not going to go into specific investments, guys. So like, if you I just don't ask me those type of questions. Let's see. Thoughts on the future of the Lakers and rich ownership. I think that this is going to be better. Like the Busses were undercapitalized. That was their problem. Like Jerry Buss was a great owner for the Lakers. The Lakers have generally been a pretty well-run franchise. The problem is that they seem to be hamstrung by the fact that it was a family business whose only real asset was the Lakers. So they couldn't really redeploy capital into the team like other franchises like the Golden State Warriors have been able to do. And so it has hurt the competitiveness of the Lakers to a certain degree. I think selling to more well-capitalized ownership, particularly the owners who have done a really good job with the Dodgers. Unfortunately, I'm not a Dodger fan, so I'm not really happy that the Dodgers have turned around, but they've done a great job with the Dodgers. And if they can do that same kind of success with the Lakers, I think Laker fans here, such as myself in Southern California, would probably be pretty happy with the results. And the team would probably make more money as well. Um, and let's see. Could you discuss the typical journey of starting a new business? How many years it generally takes before entrepreneurs begin seeing a financial return? Well, the problem is, like with entrepreneurship, there really is no typical, but you can't really expect to make any real money the first 2 years. That's all really I'm going to say on that. And it's kind of like a hockey stick. It's going to look like you're doing, it's kind of like having my YouTube channel. It's going to look like you're just barely skating by or not really making any progress. And then all of a sudden, it happens. I've seen it with a lot of people who I've known who started businesses, and I think that, and that's kind of really how it is. You just have to have the capital and the determination to survive. You're going to get a lot of people questioning, why are you doing this? Why don't you stay at a good job? Um, like, but yeah, it's a big game of persistence. Thought on Pope Leo. I'm optimistic about Pope Leo so far. He's been a lot less like brash than Francis. He's not trying to shove ideology into the church that's not really aligned with the church. He's very consistent with just like the core theology, and he is a more reserved guy. And I think that in general, I think he's doing a good job. And I think it's cool that we have an American Pope as an American Catholic. So I think that what do you think lends authority to the Pope? Well, apostolic succession. The fact that you can literally trace every Pope back to St. Peter and like the tradition of it, and the fact that it's like the Catholic Church is the only like extant institution that's over 2,000 years old says a lot of its spiritual strength. The fact that no governments have survived that long, no businesses have survived that long. Like the track record has been, I think, really helpful. I mean, orthodoxy, that's a debate. Like a lot of I think orthodoxy started with the Great Schism. So, but again, that's from a Catholic perspective. So they're 1,000 years old, but or a little less. I think it's 1054. So 970 something years. But that's the debate between us and the Orthodox. And I think, but I think I have nothing against Orthodoxy. It's just my take on that. And also, I think the role of the clergy as a whole, not just the Pope, is like they're kind of like the moderators of Reddit in a way, for lack of a better term, or moderators of any internet community. Like the Bible's there, but you kind of need to like kind of have somebody like set the rules and be like, look, you can't just interpret it any way you want. Like there has to be kind of a grounding, and that's what I think with the role of the clergy. So that's yeah, we could just agree to disagree on the whole Great Schism thing. I don't really want to get into a fight about that. But when it comes to the role of the clergy, yeah, their job is to be moderators. Like that's why you have 1,000 denominations of Protestants, because anybody can interpret really the Bible any way they want. And so it just creates a bunch of like religious division. But yeah, what empire is your favorite? Prussian, Roman, or British? Or can I choose another one? Does it have to be one of those three? If I had to pick one of those three, it's probably the British, honestly. I think they did a better job of anybody in terms of building their empire. They got bigger than anybody else and running it in a humane and efficient way. So, I mean, other empires, I think they're just were cool in history. Like probably the Spanish Empire was probably a good one as well. The modern American Empire, I think, is another probably one that should be considered on that list. The Romans as well. Yeah. And they're also, I mean, in terms of, yeah, like those are probably the ones that I'd probably rank at the top. It'd be the Roman, the Spanish, the British, and the Americans. Let's see. Do you ever overly worry? Do you ever worry you're overly bullish on things like robotics? If I'm overly bullish on robotics, then my robotics, then it'll just be a slower implementation of what's eventually coming. I mean, I guess I'm just in general as an investor, you don't want to pay too high of a price for anything. So that's kind of the risk that I overpay for a company in that field. So yeah, I do concern myself with that. But in terms of like preparing for a world where robots accelerate faster, I don't really see the downside in that. What was my motivation for starting a YouTube channel? Well, my motivation really for starting a YouTube channel is that you've got I used to do a research company, and I still kind of do some research projects occasionally. And like there are a lot of ideas I used to write about or talk about, and a lot of them were not really actionable enough on an investment side to be relevant for my clients. So when I put some of the ideas that were more esoteric but were still interesting that came up with my research onto YouTube. And that's kind of what motivated me. And I had a lot of these ideas and I wanted to share them. And once I saw the channel start to get traction after I did my first what if alt history action, I got competitive and I'm like, look, I can actually like try to build a channel that will actually build an audience and people actually have to listen to. I have a lot of insights to share and people actually want to listen. And so the fact that I started just because I had a lot of ideas to share and a lot of more esoteric things came up in my research. But the fact that like the audience kind of came, it motivated me to keep going and push it harder than I would have otherwise. So yeah, thank you guys for motivating me. Will nursing be affected by robots? Yes, it will. There will be robots that do a lot of the basic labor that nurses do now. I did a video about this, a mobile aloha, that goes more into it. What do you think of the Vatican Bank and the privacy laws? I might be working on a video about that in the future. So, yeah, I mean, the lack of transparency is concerning. Let's just say that. But at the same time, they are an independent sovereign state, so they do have some rights to privacy. But it's let's see. When are we going to see people holding hands with robots in the middle of the street? Maybe elderly people who need help, like walking, that could probably use that. I think you will see robots like that are price comparable to a car with probably about 5 years. So by 2030. Will the economy be once AI general robotics becomes ubiquitous? I mean, I think you'll have some early signs of post scarcity society. But that's a very complicated question. I'm trying to. In terms of the question whether it's still worth being in law, it depends how passionate you are about being in law. Like if your goal is to have a high paying, is again to be law just because it's prestigious and high paying is probably a bad idea. If you legitimately want to be law, even if it's the same as any other middle class job, and you don't have to take on have to do it, go ahead. I'm very wary of taking on debt for graduate school. And like I think the one place that I'm not as wary is maybe if you're becoming a doctor, but yeah, it does. You are right that the AI is going to lower the value proposition of taking on debt to become a lawyer. Let's see. See if there's any questions that I missed that I want to talk about. That's probably too much to scroll in. I think I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. I got other things to do the rest of today, but I wanted to, since the last one of these got disrupted by like repairs on my apartment, I wanted to redo it so that you guys get a full full end of the $50,000 celebration. But yeah, thank you guys all. I'm gonna do the next live stream in a couple weeks when I talk. It's gonna be a travel themed live stream where I'm going to talk about the economics of tourism, the travel industry, and the future of all of that. I don't have enough people to do a Utah meetup. So yeah, that's like that. People ask me about that. If enough people voted on Utah, I would consider going there. And that's why I sent the link to the form. Like, here's the tour survey if you guys want. And I just did a Chicago meetup like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, so people asking me about that. And then if you want to talk to me more about like your direct questions, you can contact me through my consultation. But yeah, I'm going to get going. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your 4th of July weekend. Thank you guys all for your support.